from the narrative self to the witness who was never in the story. The decision you think you are about to make has already been made. Not by God, not by fate in any mystical sense, by physics, by neuroscience, by a sequence of events that predates your awareness of this moment by approximately half a second. The readiness potential, a measurable electrical buildup in the supplementary motor cortex, precedes voluntary movement by roughly 500 milliseconds before you become consciously aware of the intention to move. Benjamin Libet's experiments in 1983, replicated and extended, contested and refined across 40 years of neuroscience since, demonstrated that the brain initiates action before conscious intention arrives. You experience yourself as the author of your decisions. The neuroscience suggests you are the narrator of decisions already underway. The you that chooses is arriving to a party where the biology has already made arrangements. Feel the specific constriction in the chest as this lands, not intellectual discomfort. A somatic tightening, the rib cage contracting around the heart in a protective reflex. The organism's identity is tightly wound around the concept of being a voluntary agent. Threaten the concept and the organism responds as though physically threatened. Your self-narrative is not a description of you. It is a construction. The default mode network, the brain's baseline resting state activity, the system that activates during self-referential thinking, autobiographical memory, imagined futures, and judgments about others, as the neural machinery of the narrative self. It runs constantly, in the background, knitting experiences into a coherent story with a consistent protagonist, you. This is computationally expensive. The brain uses approximately 20% of the body's energy budget, while comprising only 2% of its mass, and much of that metabolic cost maintains the DMN's continuous storytelling operation. You are spending enormous biological resources on a story about yourself. The story is not a direct report of what is happening. It is an edited, confabulated, continuously revised construction, designed to maintain the coherence of a self that is, at the quantum and neurological level, not as coherent as it claims to be. The story has a protagonist. The protagonist has a past. The past is stored by the same DMN that is editing the present. The editing has priorities, narrative coherence, self-consistency, the protection of the protagonist's status as a responsible agent. The actual record of occurrence is sacrificed to these priorities continuously and automatically. You are not remembering what happened. You are remembering the last version of the story you told about what happened. Quantum indeterminacy means the system is not mechanically predetermined in the Newtonian sense. But the freedom available to you is not the freedom of the conscious ego. You are choosing from a menu generated by processes you did not choose, using preferences you did not install, a nervous system shaped by genetics you did not select, and experiences you did not fully consent to have. The feeling of choosing freely is real. The freedom it reports is narrower than it feels. The menu is the cage, and you did not design the menu. Now the grim children's tale that maps this precisely. The child follows the instructions, makes every choice the instructions specify, arrives at the outcome they didn't choose, and can't change. The horror is not the outcome. The horror is the mid-story recognition that following correctly was never going to lead anywhere other than here, that the sequence itself was the cage. Buddhist neuroscience, the work of Richard Davidson and others studying long-term meditators, has shown that experienced practitioners exhibit dramatically reduced DMN activity during practice. They are not less conscious, they are not less functional. In many cases, they are more responsive, more emotionally flexible, more cognitively precise. What they have is reduced narrative self-construction. The story is quieter. The protagonist takes a back seat. And what reports from this territory consistently describe is not emptiness or loss, clarity, a far more accurate experience of what is actually happening, unclouded by the editorial lens of the self-story. The sequence is still occurring. The readiness potentials are still firing. The DMN is still trying to run its narration. But in the reduced DMN state, what is noticed is not the narrator's story. What is noticed is the space in which the narration is occurring. That space is what the practice is pointing at. Roger Penrose, in discussing Gödel's incompleteness theorems and shadows of the mind, argues that human mathematical understanding involves a kind of insight that cannot be reduced to algorithmic processing. The mind can see the truth of propositions that no formal system can prove from within. This is significant. It means consciousness is not the product of the sequence it observes. It is something that can step outside the formal system and see it whole. This is the Sakshi, the witness, in Kashmir Shaivism, not the protagonist of the story, not the agent making choices from the menu, the awareness that can see the story, the menu, the protagonist, and the sequence itself, and is none of those things. Right now, you are aware of the content of your mind. Thoughts arise. They have a quality of being yours. They seem to be generated by the protagonist in the story. But the awareness that is noticing the thoughts, is that also the protagonist? Is the awareness a thought, or is it what thoughts appear in? Sit with that question not as an inquiry to be solved, but as a pointing. The thought, I am aware, is a thought, but the awareness in which that thought appears is prior to the thought. You didn't create it by thinking it. It was already there. The readiness potential fired before you were conscious of the intention, but the awareness that noticed the readiness potential's result was not itself preceded by a readiness potential. Awareness does not need to be initiated. It is already present. The Spanda Karikas describes Svantan Tra, the absolute freedom of consciousness. Not the freedom to make choices within a determined system, the freedom of being prior to the system. The riverbed is not carried by the river. The river flows through the riverbed. The sequence of causation flows through the substrate of consciousness. The substrate is not caused. The substrate is what causing happens in. Here is what this releases in the body when it lands. Not euphoria, not collapse, but a settling in the abdomen. The solar plexus unclenching, the breath dropping to its natural depth. Because the solar plexus has been bracing against the possibility that the sequence might go wrong, that the protagonist might fail, that the story might not hold. And when the one who is bracing recognizes that what they actually are is not the protagonist, but the awareness in which the protagonist's entire story, choices, readiness potentials, DMN narrations, menu of preferences, appears and plays out, the brace becomes unnecessary. Not resignation, recognition. The story continues, the sequence continues, the readiness potentials keep firing, the DMN keeps narrating, but the one who was gripping the narrative for dear life can release the grip, not because the story is over, but because what you are was never the story. It was always the awareness in which the story occurred. And awareness does not need to grip. Awareness is already everything the grip was trying to hold. You have been clenching the steering wheel of a car you are not driving. The car will continue on its road, and your hands can rest. Not in defeat, in the recognition of what was true before you were born. The destination was always here. The sequence has always been arriving at this. The story was always being told by something that had never for a single moment left home.